I need to have a discussion about a book that I gave 2 stars to. So you're coming along with me for this ride. We're going to get into all the spoilers. And if you've read this book, I want your thoughts and opinions. And that book is Devil's Cold Dish. All right. So since we're doing spoilers, I'm going to give spoilers for all the books up to this point. So if you have not read them and want to, this may not be the video for you. Otherwise, let's have a discussion about it. All right, so starting with how I got into the series to begin with, because I think that is important and valid to point out at this point. I was looking in the Goodreads giveaways and there was a mystery that was a historical mystery, and I thought, yay, let's get this. Or let's, put in for it. I love Goodreads giveaways. I find some real gems there. I ended up winning the book. Got it home, and I had won book 6. I opened it, I started reading it, and went, there seems like there has been a lot that has happened in this series that I need to catch up on before this book is going to make sense. And I'd had that happen one other time. Most mystery series, I can pick up any book in the series-ish and be pretty much caught up with what's happening. I don't necessarily always read things in order because of that, and most cozy mystery series especially, you can just kind of pull out a book and be like, oh, this is a self-contained story. This is not. There is a huge character arc. Now, that being said, I previously also read the Gaslight Mystery series, which also have that huge character arc throughout. And the Gaslight Mystery series is probably my favorite mystery series. So I thought, okay, I'm in for an exciting time with lots of exciting characters. And that has generally been true up to this point. So, to give you some backstory, we have Will. He's our main character. In the Revolutionary War, he was a soldier and he solved a mystery during the Revolutionary War, which gave him some kind of reputation as somebody who can solve mysteries. And he found out he was really good at that and seeing clues and stuff like that. So he's like an amateur detective type thing. He goes back to his life. He becomes a weaver. He inherits a farm from his parents that he's not really into the farm, but it's fine. And he's a weaver. He's off doing his weaving thing. His wife has a baby, and she dies. But I want to say it wasn't from childbirth. It was from something else. I don't remember exactly when she dies in this. But this is all before the first book. Just giving you background to make all the stuff I'm going to be saying make sense. So his sister and brother-in-law take care of the farm, and his son, well, he's out doing the weaving thing because he's not really a farmer. He's not really into the farming thing. He is a weaver. He loves being a weaver, and so they're managing his whole farm while he's gone. Well, turns out they're abusive to his son, and in the first book, his son has run away from his sister and brother-in-law. He's run away to join the Shakers. So Will goes to a Shaker community to try to bring back his son, and there's a murder there that he has to solve. He also, in that one, meets Lydia. Lydia is the woman he's going to fall in love with, I think, in the course of that book, and then he's married her the rest of the series. I assume. As far as we've gotten in the series, they're married. So anyway, he and his son and Lydia come back, and he's like, listen, sister, you were supposed to take care of my son and take care of the farm, but you failed. You were awful to him, and you cannot live here anymore. So he kicks her and her husband and her kids, one of whose name is Charlie or Charles, I want to say it's Charlie, who is close to David's age, and him and David are pretty close, kicks them off the land, and they go live somewhere else. I don't remember exactly the context of where they're living. But anyway, Will and David, his son, and Lydia take over this farm. And David is the one mostly running it because he did all the farm work and stuff before while he was living with his aunt and uncle. And Will is still wandering off and doing weaving. The second book, it was one of his friends who died and he investigated that. The third one, I don't remember the context of it, but it was a lady out of town who had some kids, and him and Lydia ended up adopting the kids after their mom was killed. The fourth book, and in that third book, I believe it was the third book that this happened in, Will, after they come back, he gets into a fight with his brother-in-law. And he punches him. And the brother-in-law hits his head against a stone on the ground and suffers what we today would probably consider a traumatic brain injury. And this has made him very childlike. This has obviously caused a lot of problems with his cognition. It's very important. So he has a lot of issues with his brain, like to the point that the sister's like, he can't work, he can't contribute to the family, he's basically useless. This is not good. I cannot take care of my kids and my family with a husband in the shape. I need you to help me, brother, because you were the one that did this. You were the one that messed up my husband so that you punched him, and now he's messed up, and now you're expected to take care of me and my kids. So Will has been kind of helping with that. But him and his sister do not like each other, do not get along. And so he, in the last book, had actually met another woman and really learned, not met like romantically, but met a woman in a mystery and really learned a little bit more about the difficulties and plight of women in this era. Because let's face it, being a woman in history has always sucked, and you're limited in your options. There's not a lot of things you can do, especially if you have a man who is incapacitated or terrible or abusive or whatever. You really are screwed. And so his sister is not in the greatest situation. She's trying to take care of herself and her children and this husband who is, obviously brain damaged. And she's expecting Will to help her. And in the last book, he was like, man, I need to be nicer to my sister. That's important because in this book, he apparently forgot all the lessons he was learning in that last book. We open this book and Caroline is again being like, hey, Will, I need your help. We are starving. We're not getting the food we need. And like David points out to Will, he's like, our chickens keep going missing. I think Auntie's stealing the chickens. And Will's like, I'm sending over food. I'm doing this and that. I'm trying to help you. But she's like, it's not enough. Let us move back in and, take care of us. And Will is not going to do that. And I think that's valid. He's worried that Carolyn and Lydia won't get along, which I think is fair. They would not. And that Caroline would try to take over the household, and she probably would. But at the same time, if you're stealing chickens, you're probably not doing great. And again, as a woman whose husband is in an invalid now, more or less, and all these kids take care of, and not really like a flourishing farm, you're kind of screwed. You are. So I do think there's something to be said for Will not being necessarily as sympathetic to Caroline as he should be. Caroline is awful, and she's been awful throughout the whole series, so that's probably part of it. Anyway, we get that. That's just how things start. Then there is a murder, and I think the first person who's murdered, they were shot and left in a forested area. And something about it makes Will a suspect almost immediately. So Will's a suspect, but in a very casual way. And him and the police chief or the sheriff or whatever are friends. And he's like, hey, I don't really think you did this. Can you help me see if you can figure out who did it? And Will's first thought is, or one of his thoughts pretty early on is, I bet it was my sister. I bet she's mad at me still because I'm not helping her and letting her move in and trying to frame me for murder. Okay. Then there's a second murder. And this one is even a more clear framing. Lydia's candles have been left at the scene. And he has been killed horrifically. And people around town are like, we heard your wife's a witch. She's not really a witch. She was a member of the Shaker community, which apparently there was some people who were like, this is a strange, weird religion. It must be witchcraft. People are crazy. Historical context, that has always been a thing, unfortunately. So now everybody in town is like, Lydia is the one killing people. They're sacrifices to the devil. So Will is trying to figure out who killed the second person, and he finds out that it's his sister who's been telling people that his wife's a witch. So he's like, Caroline did it, and she's doing it to frame Lydia. Although he's also like, there's no way that she could have lifted the guy up, because the guy was found up on something, I want to say like posed on a water wheel, maybe. It's been a couple weeks since I've read this. I just am now taking the time to sit down and talk to you about it. I meant to do it sooner, but life's been busy. But anyway, so the guy was posed, and her candles are all around, and Will is like, I think my sister's trying to set me up. He's so determined that it is his sister. Then he brings in the notion somewhere in there, well, wait, maybe it's her husband. Maybe he's faking being brain damaged so that he can, get away with all this stuff and still commit these murders. Now, again, this guy is non-functional to the point of can't take care of his family. He wanders around, he's not humaning in any kind of decent capacity. But that's Will's second thought, is maybe this guy is just faking his injuries. Or my sister did it, even though she couldn't physically do it. So things get really bad, and people are like witch hunting Lydia, and he's like, okay, this is not safe. So he sends Lydia off, because Lydia is pregnant at this point. So he sends her off with all of the kids except for David. So David and him stay to run the farm. Then there's a third person, I believe, who is killed. And they are sure it is Will who's done this, because it was one of the people who had accused Lydia of witchcraft, and they thought that it was like a revenge thing. And I may be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that's what happened. So Will goes on the run. These people are trying to get Will, and he spends a lot of the book running and trying to figure out what's happening. My first issue is, honestly, at this point, Will should have probably just been like, this town is clearly not a safe place for me and my family. I don't even like my farm that much. I should just go. I should just get out of here, because David's safe. That's never an issue. It's clear no harm's going to come to David. I could just deuce out and go to my wife, and like we know we could join a Shaker community if we needed to. We won't, because of issues with like they would be separated because men and women can't live together. But like we could join a Shaker community and stay there for a while until we get our crap together. He has a sister, and his sister he calls to help take care of Caroline, but like he could have called his sister and been like, hey, crap's happening. Can you let me kind of stay with you for a minute until I get my life together? Because I don't think that sister's in town. I think she's somewhere else. He's done all this traveling other places, so he must have money to board somewhere, because he's boarded other places. He has friends from other towns. He could do that. And also, he's a weaver. He has some skills. So it's not like there's a real good reason that he can't just be like, this is craziness, I'm leaving. And again, like the author wrote it to the point that things are so bad that he really should make that decision. And kind of he does at the end of the book. But like when they're trying to actively murder him and his wife, maybe you should make that decision then. And you have no police protection, because now the police who was on your side has been fired because of helping you. So you have no law enforcement protection. You have nobody watching out for you, and literally you are a shoot on sight. And why Will doesn't just be like, I'm out of here, I'm good. And I think that is actually the point of this whole book, is to get Will out of town permanently, because at the end, that is what happens. Even once everything's resolved, he's like, I don't want to live here anymore. So he gives David the farm and is like, deuces. And I'm like, why didn't we do that at the beginning of the book, when you're just running around going, well, I'm a shoot on sight. People are trying to kill me. They're trying to kill my wife. I can't ever come back here safely. Like, why didn't you leave? Because you want to solve the mystery, because you want to know what's happening. You want to know who's framing you. And I get that. But it got so serious so fast, you really shouldn't have done that. You should have just gone with your wife. She is pregnant with your kid. She's got 4 little kids at home. Just go with her. Go be with her. Start a new life. The fact that you're pursuing this is kind of stupid. And it still ends with the same of him being like, hey, David, I'm going to sign the farm over to you. It's your farm now. We're going to deuce out of here. Okay, so he is trying to figure out what happened and trying not to get killed. And I will say too, I probably need to back up. Will has been in this book a much bigger, like, he's not acting to character. He's not acting his normal intelligent self. He's very focused on Caroline must have done this. And also, like, there's this indication that he's always a brawler. He's a tough guy. He fights everybody. And granted, I read the other books on audio. This is the first one I read, and it's been a little bit, but I don't recall him ever being like in my brain as somebody who's just a brawler. Like, he's a nice guy. He fosters all these kids, and if he can defend himself, I've never been like, oh, he's gonna get killed. But like, he can defend himself, but I've never seen him as like somebody who's just a brawler. And in this book, like, there's a time he picks a fight with one of his friends for no good reason other than to make him a suspect in that guy's murder later. It just, like, they get in a fight about politics. But he's not generally a brawler. He has friends. He has good relationships. He's not a complete jerk. Why are we suddenly acting like he's just always getting in fights? So he was acting way out of character through this entire book. Kind of a jerk, not making a lot of sense what he's doing. So then we get to the end, and we find out. And I found this so problematic. And one of my big issues with this series as a whole has been the author does stuff that I find problematic. They may not find problematic, but I feel like it is. And in this one, the person who has been trying to kill him is none other than his brother-in-law. The one who is brain damaged, who apparently has enough clarity and lucidity among all of this to plan these murders, frame Lydia, and granted, we find out that his son, the brother-in-law's son, Charlie, was helping. And Charlie ultimately, I believe, kills his dad at the end, question mark, because the brother-in-law ends up dead as well. And yeah, and it's just, that's so problematic to me. So problematic. This guy has been faking his traumatic brain injury so that he, and like, it's not even faking, we're told. It's like he's just having moments of lucidity. Moments of lucidity enough to plan complicated murders with his, like, 16-year-old son? I don't buy it, folks. I'm not okay with it. And again, it's just, I find it very problematic. We know Will hit him. We know that Caroline is not having a thriving family, and this guy is just pretending to be brain damaged. Like, that bothers me. I don't enjoy that trope, and I know we see it sometimes in mysteries and thrillers of people who are pretending to be sick, and granted, the doctors aren't going to be there like they were, and the argument that's made in this book is that he is sick, he just has moments of lucidity between being, brain damaged, which I didn't think made any sense, and I had so many problems with it. And again, like, would I consider it problematic if I didn't think the author had done problematic stuff before? Maybe not. But the first two books, if I recall, the people who are killed are LGBTQIA. And obviously, writers can have whatever victims they want, and having people in this time period die because they are homosexual is, valid. People killed people because they were homosexual. But I had recently, before reading the first book, watched this discussion about from Council of the Geeks about burying your gays and how killing gay characters because they're gay is kind of cheap and Hays Cody and not great. And to do it multiple times is not great. And to then have, we're at 5 books. So 2 characters who were were killed in some way because they were gay. Again, if I'm recalling that correctly, I know the first one that was the case, and I'm pretty sure the second one as well. And then we have this guy who is faking brain damage in book 5. There's so many things we could be doing instead. so many things we could be doing that would be a lot less problematic than what we're doing. So yeah, this book I gave 2 stars. I thought Will was not acting as his characters acted in the past 4 books. His actions within the book make very little sense. And I don't buy that this guy who has convinced his wife that he's so brain damaged he can't take care of his wife and kids is lucid enough sometimes to plan a murder with his 16-year-old son. I don't believe it. I'm sorry, but I don't. So yeah, this book, I'm going to read the one that I won from Goodreads, and then I may be done with the series. If you've read the series and it gets better, because I liked the 3rd book. The 3rd book I think was a 5-star for me. I really enjoyed it. The 4th book was okay. The first 2 books, again, I had some issues with them, but I didn't think they were bad. This book I wanted to throw. If it had not been in a series that I had the next book to, I would have DNF'd it. This book should have been a DNF for me, and I'm kind of mad that I couldn't DNF it because I wanted to read the next book. And so I needed to know how this one ended so I could figure out what the heck was happening, because I think in the next book they are off living somewhere else and I needed to know why and what happened. But yeah, I was mad at this book and mad at the series. If you've gone further in the series, tell me what you think. Is it worth pursuing more books in the series if I'm having such stumbling blocks with this book? And if I have found some of the other stuff a little bit problematic. Now, I do want to say I generally love Will and his relationship with Lydia. I love him being a dad to these kids. I love all the family stuff. I just, and I love the historical-ish stuff when it's done well and in a way that works for me. And this didn't. So, yes, if you've read this series, please leave comments below to tell me what you think as far as if I should continue with, if this book was a real miss for me, and based on my reasons. All right, guys, this has been Jane. I'll talk to you next time. Bye. Pictures and patterns put into words that stream across the page.